Hello all, very warm welcome. I'm going to talk about John's Gospel again today because I really like John. It tells us so much about the more the mythic and the parallel elements within paganism, and some certainly of these kind of Gnostic streams that run through the Jesus Christianity are really to be found in John here, and they are obviously set apart from the synoptics. So the Gospel of John as a Dionysian Gospel, a detailed analysis of parallels between Jesus and Dionysus according to Dennis R. MacDonald, and we thank Dennis MacDonald here for his excellent work covering the four Gospels and the mimesis that we've already talked about. This is his book, The Dionysian Gospel, the fourth Gospel, and Euripides. It was written and published in 2017. So he argues that the Gospel of John is not merely a theological treatise or eyewitness testimony, but a work of sophisticated literary emulatio, that positions Jesus in direct rivalry with the Greek god Dionysus. According to MacDonald, the author of John employed literary themes, narrative structures, and motifs from Euripides' Bacchae and the broader Dionysian tradition to craft a portrait of Jesus as a new spiritual Dionysus, one whom transforms, reveals, and redeems in contrast to the chaotic revelry of the Greek deity. Okay, below is a comprehensive account of the specific parallels that MacDonald identifies. Okay, so we're going to see these parallels here do not actually exist in the synoptics, which is very interesting. Water into wine, John 2, 1:11 versus Dionysus, wine miracles. So John, at a wedding in Cana, in John, Jesus transforms water into wine. This is his first public miracle or sign revealing his glory. Dionysus in Euripides' Bacchae, line 704 to line 711, Dionysus causes water, wine, and milk and honey to flow from the earth in Theban mountains for his followers. The parallel here, both figures perform miraculous acts involving wine, not as mere spectacle but as proof of divinity. Dionysus provides wine as a sign of his ecstatic power. Jesus turns water into wine as a sign of his messianic authority. Okay. Wine thus becomes a symbol of joy and divine blessing. MacDonald's, and wine is also featured quite highly as a Eucharist ceremony, a kind of an embodiment of the God itself. We find this in other traditions as well. And there's a long history. Both figures. So MacDonald's interpretation then, the Cana miracle echoes Dionysian wine motifs, but Jesus supersedes Dionysus by offering a sober, enduring joy instead of madness. Alright, the miracle is also set in a domestic Jewish setting rather than a wild bacchanalia or bacchanal. 2. Jesus as the vine, as the true vine. John 15:1. I am the true vine and my Father is the vine-dresser. Dionysus. Dionysus is the god of the vine and viniculture, often depicted in art with grapevines and drinking cups. Parallel, Jesus appropriates Dionysian symbolism to express a deeper spiritual reality. Instead of physical intoxication, the vine in John yields spiritual nourishment and union. Like, drink of my blood, become as I, become me. All this. Don't get pissed though. Don't do that. Paul is not a drinker as well. He says against drinking. MacDonald's, the symbolism of wine and the vine directly evokes Dionysus, but is reinterpreted through the lens of love and divine indwelling. Okay. So there's a legislation here against wine drinking in Christianity to this day, actually. Divine sonship, not many Christians actually go with that, but divine sonship and mortal mother. John, Jesus is described as the Son of God, born of a woman. John 1:14 and 3:16. Dionysus is the son of Zeus and Semele, a mortal woman. His divine paternity and mortal maternity are central in this mythology. So we see the same thing there. We see the same outlook there in Greece, hundreds of years before Christ. Parallel, both figures are sons of God and mortal women, occupying a liminal space between divine and human. Okay. MacDonald, this parallel underscores the broader literary pattern of divine men misunderstanding, pattern of divine men misunderstood by mortals and ultimately vindicated. So misunderstanding and rejection now by their own. Jesus is not recognized by his own people. John 1:11. He is misunderstood throughout the gospel. Nicodemus in John 3, and the Jews in John 6 and 8. Okay, Dionysus in the Bacchae. Dionysus returns to Thebes, to his birthplace, but is not recognized as a god. King Pentheus mocks and imprisons him. Parallel, both are rejected by their own communities. Their divine status is hidden or denied, leading to conflict. MacDonald, this dramatic irony, where the audience knows the identity of the divine figure but the characters do not, is a central device in both narratives, arrest and trial. Okay, John's arrest is John. Jesus is arrested in Gethsemane, mocked, tried before Pilate, of course, and condemned to death. John 18-19. Dionysus here allows himself to be captured and brought before Pentheus. He is mocked and interrogated before enacting divine vengeance. Parallel, both submit to arrest and undergo a judicial process in which their interrogators do not realize they are dealing with a god. MacDonald, this dramatic structure of John's passion mirrors Euripidean tragedy. Jesus is serene, in control and mysterious, like Dionysus. 6 here. The divine epiphany and triumph. Jesus reveals his divinity through resurrection and post-mortem appearance. John 20 and 21. Dionysus reveals his divinity in the Bacchae by escaping confinement, producing miracles, and ultimately destroying his enemies. The Son of Man cometh, right, as well. Parallel, both demonstrate power after apparent defeat, revealing themselves as divine in a climactic moment. MacDonald, Jesus' resurrection functions as an epiphany, but instead of revenge, he offers peace and redemption, thus redefining divine justice. Okay, so there's always a little hybridizing here of these stories between cultures. Jesus as wine and wine as symbols of joy. Wine in John is symbolic of spiritual joy, abundance and love. It appears at the beginning, Cana, and implicitly at the Last Supper, John 13. Dionysus is the god of wine, ecstasy and joyful madness. His cults are centered on wine rituals. So they love a good knees up. Parallel, both figures are associated with transformative joy. Jesus, however, offers an inward eternal joy rather than drunkenness. MacDonald, the appropriation of Dionysian imagery points to a theological inversion. Jesus brings clarity, not chaos. God walks among mortals. John, the Word, became flesh and dwelt among us. John 1:14. Dionysus in the Bacchae, Dionysus takes on human form to walk among mortals, testing their piety. Parallel, both stories center on a God who takes human form and walks unrecognized among people. Okay, MacDonald, the idea of divine disguise and eventual revelation is fundamental to both narratives. Okay, so there's a little crossover here. We've got a couple more, I think. Tragic irony and inevitable conflict. John, Jesus predicts his death and accepts it willingly. John 10, 17 and 18. Dionysus orchestrates his own arrest and Pentheus' downfall, playing along to expose human pride. In both narratives, the divine figure is not a victim but a knowing participant in the tragic events, guiding the drama to its climax. MacDonald, Jesus' control of his own fate is another echo of Dionysus' theatrical manipulation of events in the Bacchae. So John here, I think, appears to be more in Jesus in John appears to be far more accepting of his fate and knowing of what's going to happen, because he is one with God. I think that's what I remember from John's Gospel over, say, Matthew's. Why have you forsaken me, God? But John doesn't say that. So wine and blood. At the crucifixion, blood and water flow from Jesus' side. John 19:34. Dionysian rituals are often bloody, involving dismemberment and ecstatic sacrifice. Okay, parallel. Both figures are associated with life through blood. In Jesus' case, blood becomes salvific. In Dionysus' myth, blood is ecstatic and sacrificial. And of course, let this be my blood, right? The wine is blood, turns into blood. This grisly. The scene at the cross recasts Dionysian themes of violence and transformation into a redemptive Christian key. Okay, so the conclusion here, not too long, fellas, guys and girls. MacDonald argues that the author of John intentionally constructs Jesus as a new Dionysus for a Greco-Roman audience by drawing on recognizable themes from Euripides and the Dionysian cult. John's Gospel competes with Greek religion not by rejecting it outright, but by transforming its central mythic structures. Jesus outshines Dionysus in power, mortality, and universal appeal, whereas Dionysus punishes. Jesus redeems. Where Dionysus intoxicates, Jesus enlightens. This literary emulation reveals the Gospel of John not to be merely a Jewish Christian text, but also a Hellenized Greco-Roman theological drama steeped in the tragic forms and motifs of the Hellenistic world. Okay, primary sources here. And we're using the Dionysian Gospel by a preeminent scholar. He's old now. He's a very cool guy. You can find him online. I also wanted to just quickly run through some of the absent things here, themes that are not in the other Gospels. So we have no water into wine miracles in the Synoptics. No use of Jesus as the vine metaphor and the vine metaphor. Jesus is portrayed more as a suffering servant or a prophet in the Synoptics than a divine revealer in disguise. Okay, the style is more Hebraic and apocalyptic, less Hellenistic and theatrical. The tone, imagery and symbolism are different, more rooted in Jewish, prophetic and wisdom traditions. Okay, so, what are we seeing here? I think it's another beautiful reason to put John apart from the Synoptics, and it helps us to understand why Gnosticism really flows through John's Gospel here a little more than the others. And if we take this Dionysian level here, and MacDonald goes into this, you can excavate the text here and begin to see the waves of adaptation that John itself took as a gospel. And there are waves of the writing process here happened in stages. And MacDonald will say the Dionysian level is probably the oldest then you get slightly more anti-Semitic verbiage as well that comes second, and then a lot more stuff that helps to integrate it a little better with the synoptics, though it is a different text. And I think actually some of the, I don't want to call it anti-Semitic so much as just anti-Jewish, like the theology of the Jews at the time, the Sanhedrin, because it obviously runs against this. We've already talked about the, you are of the devil, your father is the bad guy kind of thing, that Jesus says himself, separating himself away from his Jewish forebears. So I thought that would be quite interesting to talk about. I'm adding this to the John series, I suppose. It's really rather interesting, but it shows you again how mythic the Gospels are, how absolutely inextricable they are from the pagan world of writing and theatre, mysticism, and so on. So, thanks guys, and I'll see you soon.